Previously on Read with Ronald.
I have all his covers like this. I have all of them like this. Look, this is my favorite type of covers from him. I literally have all of them. They're right there with Ronald's books. Have
I
all
really
of
like this
Ronald's
cover.
books. I have this. All the covers that are like this. I have all
Mhm.
of them. Oh, I sent you. I sent him one of my extra copies because I ordered like
Oh,
three
cute.
of them. Do you have it?
Uh-huh. She sent me these.
Because I ordered those and they weren't the ones I wanted. So I sent it to him. I said, go ahead, read these. I don't know if he even read them yet, but I sent them
I
to him
haven't.
because
I ain't read them. On this edition of Read with Ronald, I read Eric Jerome Dickey's Liar's Game. So I just want to let you know before we get into this, there is a scene that depicts a man attempting to force himself on a woman attempting to force himself on a man, and there are two instances of domestic violence. That's what I want to warn you about. And then I will be getting to this plot. I'll go in depth about the book. So if you want to read this book, or if you are planning on reading this book, thank you for watching up to this point, but go ahead and click off here. And who knows? If you want to come back after you've read the book and see what my thoughts and my opinions are and decide whether or not you agree or disagree with them, feel free.
First published in 2000, Eric Jerome Dickey's Liar's Game follows Vince and Dana through the ups and downs of their relationship and explores how lies and past hurt affects it. Eric Jerome revealed in his author's note that Liar's Game main plot was originally a side plot that took the forefront and that the characters were much different at conception. Liar's Game was nominated for an NAACP Image Award and reached #1 on the Billboard bestsellers list.
So how I got this book was Tati gave it to me. I want to say late 2021, early 2022. Like she said, I'm the critic. So I was ranting to her about the book I had just read, and she was telling me about the book she was reading. And talking about books is what we do. So we was just talking about books, and we got on the topic of Eric Jerome Dickey. And so she sent me a photo of this cover of Friends and Lovers. And she told me how much she loved those covers. And I was like, ooh, I like that cover too. It looks like old school black art. And so basically she was like, oh yeah, I have like 2, 3 different copies of his other books, Cheaters and Liars Game, because I collect the covers. And like, they had the nerve to send me a copy of Liars Game with no cover.
that second book, Liar's Game, I bought that book like 3 times until I could get the hardcover copy like this because I have all of them. But yeah, that's and they sent me that other book that was the hard one but with no cover. Come on now, that made me mad.
And I was like, oh well, I mean, if you're not trying to hang on to them copies, I mean, you can send them my way. I mean, I'll take them off your hands. And so she was like, yeah, I'll send you the copies. And so that's how I ended up with this book. I've had these books for like a year, and I didn't, for some reason, I don't know. I just avoided reading them. After reading Friends and Lovers, I needed more. So that's why I read this book. I needed more from him.
Today is February 4th. I am a little over 100 pages into Liar's Game. The story follows Vince and Dana. Vince is a divorced father with multiple jobs. Dana is Dawn's cousin, the Dawn that was in Cheaters. She just moved to LA from New York. She's a real estate agent and she's having some financial difficulties. The story is about them two. They meet, they get in a relationship. So far into this book, only 100 pages and some change. They done already got together, broke up, and got back together. Then there's Dana's friend Jerry. Jerry is a single mom of 2. She also works as the real estate agent, but she has a night job as an exotic dancer. And then there is Vince's best friend Womack, who is married to Rosalie, and he suspects Rosalie is having an affair on him because she keeps claiming she's going to the gym, but she doesn't actually seem like she's going to the gym. It's February 5th. It's about 2:30 in the morning. I have about a third of the book left to read. Dana and Vince, they don't need to be together. They don't need to be together. Dana has horrible trust issues because of Vince lying about being married. Malika is Vince's ex-wife. Malika calls and Dana basically tells her she has the wrong number, and then a week later she calls again, and this time Dana lets her speak to Vince, and basically Vince finds out that Malika has their daughter Kwanzaa, thinking that her new husband is Kwanzaa's dad and not Vince. Dana is traumatized by what happened to her parents, and she's also, of course, not trusting Vince because of his earlier lies. But she's also proven that she's not ready to be a part of Kwanzaa's life because she knowingly keeps information about Kwanzaa and Malika being back in the United States away from Vince. Once Vince finds out, he and Dana get into this huge fight, like so bad that the police are called, and like these two just don't need to be together because Dana doesn't trust Vince. Dana has proven she's not capable of being mature enough to be in Kwanzaa's life because she's jealous of Malika. And Vince has his own emotional issues because of everything that's going on with Kwanzaa, and then Dana's just acting the freaking most. She's doing the freaking most. Dana is going in the same camp as Shelby, where it's like, I want to root for you, but you are doing entirely too much. You're doing entirely too much. After the big fight, Dana calls her ex Claudio. They hook back up, and it's about to go downhill from there because that's where I left off reading. So it's about to go downhill from there because Vince catches her on the date with Claudio. Meanwhile, Womack feels like Rosalie is cheating on him, and he has requested for Vince to basically follow her and find out what's going on, which is what Womack did for him back when Vince and Malika were married. And that's how Vince found out that Malika was cheating on him. And that's another thing. Dana feels that Kwanzaa is not Vince's child because she's like, how can it be your child? But Malika's keeping her away from you, and there's no contact, and they're not telling you nothing about nothing that's going on. And she's got it. It's just too much. And Dana's doing entirely too much. She getting on my nerves. These two don't need to be together. They don't need to be together. They're doing too much. There is a storyline with these two named Juanita and Naomi. They are Vince's landlords, and they're a couple. They live next door to Vince and Dana. Well, yeah, Dana's moved in, but they're a couple. Juanita is very jealous. She's jealous of Vince because she feels like Vince is paying too much attention to Naomi, and she's worried that Vince is going to take Naomi from him. Juanita is annoying. Juanita is very annoying, and she's very overbearing. She's very domineering. And Naomi, she describes Naomi as being naive. And I'm like, Juanita, is it that Naomi's naive? Or is it that you feel that your relationship with her is not as strong as you think it might be? Because let's not forget, Juanita, you're cheating on her with a Spanish-speaking girl. And Vince may not know what you're saying in them conversations, but I do, because I can read Spanish. And I know exactly what you're saying. And what you are saying indicates that you are cheating on Naomi, so you have no room to talk. It's just too much going on in this book. It's later on today on February 5th. I just finished Liar's Game. I give it a 4. A lot happened, but I give it a 4. Dana and Vince, they drove me crazy. Them and their relationship drama drove me crazy. Jerry and her man, her storyline, what happened to her, that was just so wrong. But it was just so wrong. Rosalie and Womack, they figured their lives out. Juanita and Naomi, that's the storyline that just... That's a storyline that just was a mess. That was a mess right there. I give it a 4. I enjoyed it. Like I said, Dana and Vince drove me crazy with their foolishness, but I give it a 4.
This book is called Liar's Game, but sometimes I be messing up and call it Liar Games. I be calling it Liar's Games or Liar Games, but it's called Liar's Game. This book follows Vince and Dana. Vince is a divorced single father, but he is not a part of his daughter's life, but it's not by choice. It's because his daughter is living with his ex-wife over in Germany and her new husband. The ex-wife and husband won't allow him to have any contact with the daughter. The book follows him, and it follows Dana, who is Don's cousin, Don from Cheaters, the one that was married to Darnell. This book follows Vince and Dana. They're our protagonists. So the book opens with Vince. He goes to the club, and he tries to talk to this one girl and like get her number, but after he reveals that he has a daughter, that he is divorced, she doesn't want to deal with him. So that's why when he meets Dana, he lies and tells her that he has never been married and has no kids. And so he meets Dana. Dana is down there. She's waiting for her friend Jerry, short for Geraldine. Jerry is a divorced mother of 2, and she is coming down there basically to get her groove back. And Dana is a real estate agent, and so is Jerry. And we also discover that she's working a secret job that she doesn't want anybody to know about. She's a real estate agent by day, has a secret job at night to help support her kids because she's divorced. The kid's father is like, he's in their life, but it's like he's behind on child support for whatever reason. So Jerry just having to make it work. While they are down there at the club, Vince and Dana, they get to talking, they get to knowing each other. And they're haters. They're haters because they're talking about everybody else in the club and how they're all old and stuff like that. I'm like, y'all a bunch of haters. How y'all gonna bond over being haters? So while they're down there at the club, they come across this man named Jefferson. He is a manager for this rap group called Dangerous Lyrics. They are a quintet. There's 5 members, the main person being this girl called Butter Pecan, and Jefferson is their manager. He's 26 years old. He's 10 years younger than Jerry, but he decides to hit on Jerry, and they hit it off with each other. He's like, oh, check out my rap group. So Dangerous Lyrics comes out, they perform, they hit it off. Their lyrics are like hard-hitting lyrics, talking about like the struggle and about, you know, killing and drugs and all that type of stuff, you know. And we find out that Butter Pecan is the one who writes all the lyrics, and she writes all the songs, and she leads all the songs. So she's kind of like the lead of the group. While everyone's grooving to Dangerous Lyrics, Dana and Vince, they dance with each other. They start talking and they getting to know each other, and that's when Vince lies about not having an ex-wife or a daughter. While that's going on, he decides to go to the bathroom, and he overhears the girls of Dangerous Lyrics, like they're going off because Butter Pecan is upset because she and Jefferson, they have a thing going on with each other, and she's like, how could it be all over that old lady out there? And so basically she's upset because Jefferson is paying attention to Jerry and not her. We find out that Vince's ex-wife, her name is Malika, she has remarried to this man named Drake, and Malika and Vince, they have a daughter together named Kwanzaa. And so basically Malika and Kwanzaa and Drake, they all moved to Germany, and Vince has not seen them since the divorce, but he's been sending money to Malika's mom for Malika's mom to send over to help take care of Kwanzaa. Malika's mom does not like Vince. The rest of the family does not like Vince. And so basically Vince has this friend. He has a best friend. His name is Womack. Womack walks around with this Jerry curl on his hair that everyone hates. And he calls Vince Black Man Negro. And I was like... what is this name that you be calling your best friend? He has a wife named Rosalie. He has 4 kids with Rosalie, and then his father, Harmonica, lives with him. Harmonica used to be best friends with Vince's dad, so Vince and Womack have been best friends basically since birth. And so Womack suspects that something is going on with Rosalie because she claims that she goes out to the gym, but she does not come home looking like she's been to the gym. There's no sweat or anything all over her, and all of her clothes whenever she comes home are dry. So Vince and Dana, you know, they start hanging out, they start getting to know each other, but Vince feels friend-zoned by Dana because Dana is still kind of ambivalent towards having relationships because of her past relationship with this man named Claudio, who cheated on her with this girl named Tia. And when Tia found out about the relationship, she attacked Dana, and Dana had to put the pause on her real quick and let her know that she was not the one. She had planned on taking Claudio back after it, but she up and disappeared after letting him know what the game plan was, and then she just up and disappeared. That's why Dana moved out to LA, because she needed a fresh start away from Claudio. Vince and Dana, they're hanging out. They get together in bed, basically, while they're still getting to know each other. We found out about Vince's neighbors, Juanita and Naomi. They are a couple, and they are also his landlords. Juanita is the more domineering one in the relationship, while Naomi is the more like reserved, quiet one in the relationship. After Dana and Vince get done with what they're doing, Dana goes home. She is broke as a joke. She has basically almost no money. She owes a whole bunch of debt because when she and Claudio were a couple, she was running around with him, basically being a promoter, a party promoter, stuff like that. And she racked up a bunch of debt behind that, trying to uplift his dream. She racked up all this debt, and now she's trying to pay it off, and she filed for bankruptcy, but the bankruptcy basically fell through, and so that's why she's trying to be a real estate agent so she can pay off all this money that she owes. Claudio's sister Renee tracks her down on the internet, basically just looked up her name and found her phone number and her address. Renee tries to talk Dana back into getting back together with Claudio. Dana's not trying to hear it, but she's still hung up on him. There's just some unresolved issues with their last relationship, so she's still kind of hung up on him. So after they meet, about 6 months goes by. Things are going great with Dana and Vince. You know, they doing what they do. Vince still has not told Dana the truth about his daughter. They do what they do, and they hear Juanita and Naomi going at it next door. Naomi leaves, and then Juanita, she starts talking in Spanish on the phone. Vince can't understand what Juanita is saying, but because I took Spanish in high school and I can read it at a level of understanding without having to use Google Translate, I understand what she's talking about. And she's basically says to the person on the phone, oh, she's gone, when can I see you, basically stuff like that. And I'm like, so is Juanita cheating? A new day happens. Dana, she's coming to the apartment to see Vince. She decides to look through his mail for whatever reason, and she discovers a letter to this lady named Joanne Johnston. And so she tries to investigate, but before she can investigate, she runs into Juanita. And Juanita, you know, she's like very pro-woman, and she's like, you know, us women, we need to stick together. We need to be careful around these men, you know, basically, you know, talking to Dana, and basically distracts her long enough so that Dana does not have a chance to investigate the letter that Vince is sending out. She remembers the name, and she looks up the name, and she discovers the phone number, and she calls the number, and she discovers that Malika and Kwanzaa are back in the States with her husband Drake, but Dana doesn't know who they are. Malika's mom has died, and so Dana's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear about your mom. And basically she just plays it off as being a realtor who was just basically trying to like figure out what's going on with the mom's house, but she doesn't know anything about Malika and Kwanzaa yet. Claudio calls Dana and he lets her know that he's coming out to Los Angeles and he's doing really well for himself. He's making good money. He explains that he owns a company called TNT, and he explains that it's called TNT like dynamite because he's blowing up, and Dana accepts that. And he wants to see Dana. Dana's like, no, I don't want to see you. But Claudio, he's still pining for her. So he's like, he's not going to give up on her. After Claudio calls Dana, we find out about their backstory of why they broke up. And we find out that Dana ended up getting locked up for fighting with Tia because in the middle of the fight, she tried to stab Tia. And Tia freaked out and called the cops on her. And that's what caused her to break up with Claudio. There's two things. First of all, Womack and Vince, they do this thing like a this or that type of game where, like, for example, one of the this or that's was Nia Long or Vivica Fox. I'm not going to get into what Womack said, but basically he chose Nia Long. And so basically they do that the whole book. Like, do you want this woman or do you want that woman? We find out that Womack and Vince are in business together. They sell t-shirts as like part of their side hustle because Womack is a UPS driver and Vince he works at a factory, and they sell t-shirts on the side. And so basically they split the profit 50-50 from that. While Womack and Vince are talking, we find out that Womack married his wife Rosalie because he got her pregnant on accident and he wanted to do the right thing, and they've been married ever since. And it's the same thing that happened with Vince and his ex-wife Malika. Basically they were messing around, Malika got pregnant, and Vince married her because he wanted to do the right thing. And the reason why Vince and Malika divorced is because Malika cheated on Vince with Drake. When he found out, he basically went over there and confronted them, and he got so angry that he choked Malika out and then beat up Drake when Drake tried to intervene. And so basically that's why the family does not like Vince. After the affair was discovered, Malika and Vince ended up divorcing, and Malika ended up marrying Drake, and they moved away to Germany. Harmonica encourages Vince to be honest with Dana, because at this point they're in a relationship, and just put everything on the table at the beginning of the relationship and let her decide how she's gonna handle it. And so that's what Vince does. He tells Dana about being married previously and about having a daughter named Kwanzaa. Dana does not take it well because she's like, we've been in a relationship for 6 months. Why didn't you tell me about this? Why did you lie to me when we first got together? So she doesn't take it well. And while Vince is explaining the whole situation to Dana, Dana theorizes that Kwanzaa might not be Vince's because she doesn't understand why Malika would keep Kwanzaa away from Vince unless he was not Vince's, because she says that the affair was ongoing while they were together. And Dana is kind of coming from the perspective of watching how her parents' marriage went, because her parents' marriage fell apart because her father left her mother for another woman, and then her father was like going back and forth between her mother and the other woman, and Dana didn't like that. After Dana and Vince break up, Dana goes to talk to Jerry about it, and we find out that Jerry is an exotic dancer at night, and she works under the name Cinnamon Delight, and this is like her second job that she has taken on to cover the fact that her ex-husband is behind on child support payments. Dana basically rants about Vince to Jerry, and she ends up saying some things that offend Jerry because Jerry is in the same boat as Vince. They're both divorced and they both have children. She kind of understands why Vince did what he did, but at the same time she's kind of offended by how Dana is going about it, because it feels like Dana is talking about her. Because of Rosalie constantly going to the gym but coming home with dry clothes and no sweat on herself, Womack suspects that she might be having an affair on him. And so while he's explaining his reasonings why he believes Rosalie has an affair to Vince, they go down to this protest. And so basically this protest is a police brutality protest. This plot thread started in Cheaters. What happened was, in Cheaters, there was this girl named Tyisha Miller who was murdered by LAPD in Cheaters. I didn't bring it up in that video because I just figured it was a commentary on real world events and it wasn't like going to be anything serious. But basically, in this book, in Liar's Game, what ends up happening is a week after Tyisha is murdered, there's another black woman murdered. The police brutality protest is for the deaths of these two black women who were killed by police. While they're at the protest, Vince runs into Dana, and Dana basically lets him know, hey, I'll come by on Monday to get my stuff that I have in your apartment, and you don't need to worry about me. And that's how that goes. Jerry has gotten into a relationship with Jefferson, and Jerry has started helping to co-manage Dangerous Lyrics. It's causing friction amongst the group because Butter Pecan does not like it, but Jerry says she's not worried about Butter Pecan and Butter Pecan just needs to learn her place. Since Dana and Vince are broken up now, she starts reflecting on her past. She starts reflecting on her parents' relationship. We find out about her relationship with her father and how when she was about 16, her father flew her down to Florida to meet her siblings and to meet the other woman. After she met them, she and her father flew back to New York, and while he was up there, he ended up sleeping with her mom, and Dana didn't like that, and she went off on both of them. She went off on her dad because she's like, you left, so why are you going back and forth between my mom and your wife? You're married, you need to leave my mom alone. You had your chance with her. And then she went off on her mom. She's like, Mom, why are you trying to get with this man who left you and broke your heart? He left you for this other woman. Why are you allowing him back in your home? Why are you allowing him to do this? He's married. You need to leave him alone. Basically, she's not happy with how her parents are acting. And her mom tells her, just because we're not together no more doesn't mean we stopped loving each other. It's hard to stop loving somebody you care about. And basically, Dana takes that with her for the rest of her life, especially after both her parents die. As she's reminiscing on her parents' relationship and on her past heartbreak with Claudio, she comes over to Vince's apartment to get her stuff, and basically she and Vince make up, but the trust between them is not there anymore. And so she doesn't really trust him as much as she did before. Since Vince confessed about his daughter to her, she confesses her financial situation to him. On the outside, he's like, okay, but on the inside, he's like, oh, I wish she had told me about this earlier. Same thing she went through when she found out about the daughter. And so basically she explains that that's why she was so hurt finding out about Kwanzaa, because she's like, you kept this from me and that would affect our finances, that would affect our future, especially now that you have a daughter and you didn't say nothing. They make up. Dana decides to stay moved in. Vince decides to go through Dana's stuff to kind of piece together her past before they got together, but he then decides to let Dana tell him in her own time what she went through in her life, instead of going through her stuff, because he really can't find no answers in her stuff. Vince decides to re-propose to her again, and Dana accepts, but because the trust is not there, Dana starts having Vince's answering machine forwarded to her answering machine service. Dana accepts a call from Malika, and Malika basically explains who she is, but Dana basically tells Malika that she has the wrong number because Dana herself, is not ready to consider the possibility of Vince being a part of Kwanzaa's life, and she's concerned that there are unresolved issues, and she's scared that Vince is going to go back to Malika and leave her. Naomi and Juanita, they're fighting, they're getting into it, they're arguing. Juanita feels very insecure about their relationship, especially after she catches Vince checking out Naomi's figure. So she feels very insecure about the relationship, even though Juanita is possibly cheating on Naomi. Dana and Vince, they go out with Womack and Rosalie. When Rosalie and Dana go off to the bathroom together, Dana and Rosalie, they start getting to know each other. They start telling each other their stories. And basically, Rosalie, she graduated high school and then she was married to Womack because she got pregnant. She feels like the reason Womack and her are having issues is because she just feels like she has no time to be independent and to be herself. She's never had time to really find herself, but she says that she does not have any regrets about marrying Womack, but the way that she says it is kind of in an unsure way. Claudio ends up coming into town like he said he would, and he and Dana run into each other at a bar while Vince and Dana are out on the date after leaving Womack and Rosalie. And so he corners Dana, and he basically pushes up on her, hits on her, all that type of stuff. And Dana's like, it's not that type of party. She's still kind of feeling Claudio a little bit, but she wants to be faithful to Vince. So she runs off, goes back to Vince, and Vince sees Claudio. He asks Dana who Claudio is. Dana just plays it off as Claudio being some dude who was just hitting on her, and she rejected him. And Claudio, he decides to flex a little bit by getting his limo in front of them. Jefferson and Jerry, they end up having some issues because Jerry finds out that Jefferson was sleeping with Butter Pecan, and so Dana goes over to find out what's going on, and she finds out that Butter Pecan is pregnant, and Jerry wants Butter Pecan to take a pregnancy test to determine if she is pregnant because she doesn't believe that she's pregnant. And basically Jefferson's trying to claim that he and Butter Pecan don't have a thing going on with each other. We find out that she's the lead of the group. She writes all the songs. She wants to be an entertainment lawyer, and she's going to school, and she feels like since Dangerous Lyrics were her thing, and since Jefferson was her man, and then Jerry comes in and take over both, she feels like everything's being stolen from her. She doesn't say that, but you could tell from her reaction that's how she was feeling. She felt like her man was being taken from her, and her dream Dangerous Lyrics was being taken from her. and it was Jerry who was doing the taking. So that's why there's friction between her and Jerry. Jerry wants Butter Pecan to take a pregnancy test, and she's like, do you need me to show you where the bathroom is? And because Jefferson's been denying that they've been sleeping together, Butter Pecan's like, I don't need you to show me where the bathroom is. I already know where it is. And she starts describing Jerry's house in detail, which basically proves that she and Jefferson have been sleeping together in Jerry's house. And I was a little upset by this because I was like, Jefferson, I was rooting for you. I was kind of hoping you'd be like, you know, the kind of like the younger guy that kind of like helped Jerry get her groove back, but no, you decided to be a cheater instead and sleep with Jerry and darn half of freaking darn dangerous lyrics. Butter Pecan, she take the pregnancy test, she pregnant. Vince and Womack, they go to the gym. Womack is in a bad mood the whole time because he's still suspecting Rosalie of cheating on him. He comes across these two African girls when they leave the gym and go to the pool hall. He calls them Somalian. They get upset with him because they're Ethiopian. They start a diaspora war in the middle of the pool hall. The Ethiopian girls are like, you Black Americans, y'all don't know nothing about Africa. Y'all always claim that we're all black, but y'all don't know nothing about Africa. And y'all always insult us by wearing our clothes and stuff like this, but y'all don't know a single thing. And so basically they start going back and forth. They have a diaspora war. And basically Womack gets super pissed off about this and he's ranting about it the whole time. And after he calms down a little bit, he starts talking to Vince about his issues with Rosalie. He talks about how he and Rosalie have been married for 12 years and how for 7 of those years he's only been sleeping with Rosalie. And I was like, so does this mean that Womack has cheated in the past on Rosalie? Because last time I checked, 12 and 7 was not the same number. You know, there's a good 5-year difference in there. Womack fears that Rosalie has outgrown him because she has her degree that he encouraged her to get. He doesn't have a degree. He only has a high school diploma. He has no upward mobility in his job as a UPS driver. He gave up his dreams to support his family. And so he feels like Rosalie maybe has outgrown him and he's worried that she is planning to leave him. After Womack leaves, Vince, he goes up to his apartment and he hears Juanita and Naomi arguing. Naomi has found out about the Latina girl that Juanita was flirting with earlier in the book, and she's not happy about it. Dana comes home drunk from dealing with Jerry and her issues, and she just basically starts going off about Malika, letting loose all her insecurities about Malika and Kwanzaa. Vince, he had these pictures of Kwanzaa that he had on his dresser, and then he also had pictures of Dana and him on the dresser. He bought this nice silver frame to put Kwanzaa's picture in, while his and Dana's picture had a nice little plain brown frame. Dana, she, out of jealousy, switched the pictures in the frames. She put their picture in the silver frame and put Kwanzaa's picture in the brown frame. And then Vince switched them back. At this point in the book, I kind of started being like, if Vince marries Dana, she's not going to be a good stepmother to Kwanzaa, because she basically is like, Kwanzaa might not even be yours. And she's always like, just being so disrespectful and evil about the whole situation. Like, I'm like, Dana would not be a good stepmother to Kwanzaa. She wouldn't. She's proven this time and time again because she's too insecure. And then she's helping to keep Vince away from Kwanzaa by not telling him that Malika called. After they get into it and Dana goes to sleep, Vince goes through Dana's purse because he hears her pager going off. And he discovers a number in her purse. And so he writes the number down. And he does some investigating and he discovers that the number is coming from a hotel room. And he's like, okay, who's calling Dana from a hotel room? The next day, Dana wakes up. She wants to have intimate moments. And Vince is like, okay, but let me put on some protection. And Dana's like, no, I want to do it without protection. And Vince doesn't want to do it without protection because he's like, we don't have the money to be raising a baby right now. Why are you trying to do it without protection? And Dana, she just basically gets upset because Vince doesn't want to do it without protection. And so after she gets upset, she comes back and she reveals that she wanted to do it without protection because she wanted a deeper connection with him. And so while they're discussing their issues, Malika calls. Dana answers it once again, but this time she decides to let Vince talk to Malika. He talks to her. He discovers that they are back in the States, and he discovers that Dana knew Malika called previously. And so basically while he's on the phone with Malika trying to get her to let him see Kwanzaa, Dana's over here in the background. Oh, Vince, stop begging her. Stop begging her. Stop begging her to let her see your child. Stop disrespecting me like this. You gonna stand here in my face and disrespect me like this? I'm like, Dana, shut up. He finds out that Malika has convinced Kwanzaa that Drake is her father and that Kwanzaa has no idea about anything to do with Vince. She does not even know that Vince exists, and that upsets him very much. While Vince is on the phone trying to convince Malika to let him see Kwanzaa, Dana unplugs the phone. It gets very real between them. She's still holding on to her theory that Kwanzaa is not Vince's and just lets loose on him, but it's coming from a place of her own childhood trauma and dealing with what her parents went through. Vince leaves the apartment. He goes for like a walk to clear his head. And when he comes back, his apartment's on fire. And he runs in there and basically he sees the silver frame that Kwanzaa's photo was in on the floor. It's smashed and he sees paper burning on the stove. And he's like, oh my gosh, fire, Dana, fire. Dana ignores him. She's just staring out the window crying. And so he looks down and he realizes his picture's burning. And he loses his mind because he believes that Dana has burned Kwanzaa's pictures. They start arguing. Dana slaps him. He hits her back. They start physically fighting. And then, oh Lord, Vince tries to force himself onto Dana and Dana fights him off. And then they fight some more. And then Dana tries to force herself onto Vince. And then Vince fights her off. And then they fight some more. And then they like come to this place where they just decide to go ahead and do it with each other. And I'm like, at this point, I was like, y'all don't need to be together. Y'all don't need to be together because y'all just tried to force yourselves onto each other. Y'all have put your hands on each other. It's gotten way too real. Y'all don't need to be with each other. After they get done doing what they're doing and they calm down, the police show up. And Juanita has called the police because she heard Dana screaming and basically believed that Vince was trying to kill her. So she called the police. Vince gets handcuffed. He gets led out in handcuffs to the sidewalk. The police talk to Dana. Dana basically tells them that it was just a moment of intimacy that got a little too wild. They let Vince go, but not before embarrassing him in front of the whole neighborhood. So Vince and Dana argue. And I was like, Vince left the apartment that he pays for. I'm like, this is his apartment. He's the one paying for this, not Dana. But he leaves the apartment and goes to stay with Womack to like cool down. Harmonica gives him some words of wisdom. He's like, you need to go back and you need to make things right with her. You don't want the sun to go down on y'all anger. You never know what could happen. While he's over there with Womack, Womack decides to tell Vince that he wants him to trail Rosalie and basically find out where she keeps going because he still thinks that she's cheating on him and he doesn't know where she's going because she's saying she's going to the gym, but she comes home and she clearly has not been to the gym. He's like, I want you to trail Rosalie for me because I did the same for you with Malika even though I didn't want to. And so Vince reluctantly agrees. When Vince gets back home, he discovers that Naomi is missing and he comes across Juanita. Juanita basically tells Vince that she does not want him talking to her or Naomi. She's just jealous, period, number one. But also number two, because she's scared that Vince might entice Naomi away from her. She says that Naomi grew up sheltered and she grew up uncultured with Black culture. She's controlling and she's trying to control the relationship between her and Naomi and she doesn't want Vince talking to either one of them. Vince basically tells her if Naomi asks him not to talk to her and Juanita, then he'll do it because Naomi asks. Dana comes outside. He and Dana talk and Juanita's eavesdropping. She discovers that during their altercation, Vince hit Dana and she's like, oh, you hit Dana. And Dana like, girl, mind your business. After they talk, Dana goes to see Jerry and find out what's going on with the whole Butter Pecan situation. Jerry has basically talked to Butter Pecan about getting rid of the baby because it's going to affect the group and she is concerned about her investment in the group. She basically decides that she and Jefferson are going to stay together with some limitations on their relationship. After she sees Jerry, Dana goes to see Claudio. Claudio, of course, is still pining for her and basically Dana decides to accept the pining. And we find out that Claudio saved her life by saving her from falling on the train tracks in front of an incoming train after she was jacked for her purse in New York. I also found out that Dana calls Claudio a father figure as a joke, like as his nickname. And this was when I was like, this is why Dana is still stuck on him. Because she didn't have her dad in her life. And she sees Claudio as kind of like a faux father figure. She's basically searching for a father figure to fill the role that her dad left behind, basically. And it makes sense why she still kind of has unresolved feelings with him, even though he did her wrong and cheated on her. So basically, they go on a date. She tells everything that happened with Vince. And Claudio, of course, is like, he's trying to be super protective of Dana. He doesn't want her going back to Vince. Dana's like, it's all right. And so basically, they ride around for a little bit in his limo. And then they get out at his hotel. And Dana ends up kissing Claudio and Vince catches her. And basically after he catches her, he drives away and he's very hurt and Dana chases after him. They talk to each other. Vince breaks up with Dana because he's like, I didn't think you could be so horrible as to burn up the only pictures I have of my child. Like, you're clearly not ready to be in my child's life. And then on top of that, I catch you kissing another man out in the street. Like, I'm very hurt. Dana goes to the kitchen and she grabs some pictures and she gives them to Vince and they're the pictures of Kwanzaa. And she's like, I didn't burn the pictures of Kwanzaa. I burned the pictures of us. I was originally just going to change the frame, but then I decided to burn our picture. And she's like, I would never burn up your pictures of Kwanzaa. Like, I may be unpredictable and stuff, but I'm not evil. I wouldn't burn up a baby's pictures, especially if I wouldn't try to hurt somebody I care about like that. And so basically they break up and Dana goes to stay with Jerry. Jerry is in love with Jefferson still, but she's also in love with her ex-husband, Melvin. And so she's kind of going back and forth between the two. She doesn't really know who to choose. She loves Jefferson because he makes her feel young, but she loves Melvin because he's great with her kids, and he's not a bad guy. They just had unreconcilable issues. Vince discovered that Claudio was the one calling Dana from the hotel. He played detective, and basically he went and waited at the hotel for her to show up, and when she did show up, that's when he caught them kissing. And so he sets it up with Malika to see Kwanzaa, but he's not allowed to interact with her. He sets it up with Naomi to drive him out to the roller rink because his car has broken down. So he and Naomi ride out to the roller rink, and he is allowed to see Kwanzaa from afar, but he's not allowed to interact with her. So Naomi takes it upon herself to go and interact with Malika and Kwanzaa and find out what she can find out. And basically she relays the information back to Vince. And afterwards, Malika and Vince talk, and Vince finds out that Kwanzaa will be singing in an upcoming program at the mall. And Malika's like, you can come watch the program, but you're not allowed to interact with Kwanzaa. And Vince, because he wants to be in Kwanzaa's life so badly, he agrees to Malika's terms. Kwanzaa is starting to ask questions. She notices that her last name is not the same as Malika's last name. She starts to wonder if she has two dads, like her friend Keisha. But Malika, is still sticking to her story that Drake is Kwanzaa's father and not Vince, because she doesn't want Kwanzaa to know about Vince. But Kwanzaa's starting to put the pieces together, and she realizes something is not right. Drake and Malika's mother Joanne are the reason that Vince has not been able to talk to Kwanzaa, because they don't like Vince, and because Malika wanted to appease them both, she just went with it. On the way back, we get info on Naomi. We find out Naomi has a son from a previous marriage to a way older man, and that's who Naomi is constantly sneaking out to go see. She's sneaking out to go see her son, and we find out that she married a way older man to get citizenship into the United States because she's from Jamaica. While she and Vince are out, they end up kissing each other, and they basically end up having an intimate moment in their garage that they share. After they had the intimate moment, they discovered that the protection Vince was wearing came off during the act, and so Naomi freaks out, and then she leaves. Dana was also at the roller rink before Vince and Naomi showed up. She talked to Malika, but she didn't reveal who she was. She basically just said that Kwanzaa was pretty, tried to find out some information to figure out what she could do to help Vince. While this is going on, we get an update on the characters from Friends and Lovers and from Cheaters. We find out that Tyrell and Shelby are married now. And I was like, yes, they're married. They just purchased a house together. Then we find out that Vince's job is experiencing layoffs, and he knows that he's going to be laid off pretty soon. He starts putting in applications for other jobs. And so Dana gets him a interview at the company that Stefan works for, and Tyrell is the hiring manager over there. So we find out that Tyrell and Stefan are basically working at the same company. After Dana talks with Shelby, she goes to see Claudio, and she and Claudio, they end up having a moment in bed. After they have the long moment in bed, Dana calls Vince basically just to see if he's home, but Claudio catches her. He's like, who are you calling? And Dana's like, oh, I'm just checking my messages. They have another moment together, and after Claudio goes to sleep, Dana leaves. So while Dana is over there having her moment with Claudio and coming to her senses and realizing that Claudio's not really who she wants to be with, Vince trails Rosalie, and Rosalie knows that he's trailing her because he's not discreet enough about it. And he discovers that she's been sneaking out to go to poetry places to watch poetry and learn poetry and write poetry. They sit down together at the poetry place, and Vince notices this guy that keeps staring at Rosalie. He figures that Rosalie is not being honest about sneaking out just to go see poetry. He suspects that the guy is really who Rosalie was there to see. And so after Rosalie leaves and goes home, Vince goes down to the convenience store. He gets a bottle of beer, and he comes back and he waits outside of the poetry place for the guy to come out. And so when the guy comes out, Vince smashes the bottle against the guy's face, causing him to be injured. And Vince calls himself scaring the guy off from Rosalie. And so after he does that, he goes home. Dana's back in the apartment. She's getting the last of her stuff. And so he and Dana talk. They admit everything that they haven't admitted already, but they remain broken up. They decide to just be friends. Dana, she's decided that she's going to return to New York. She's going to return to Harlem and go back home to basically consider re-entering a relationship with Claudio, possibly, because he wants her to go back home to New York. She and Jerry go down to a comedy club that Claudio invited them to, but they discover that they're not on the guest list like Claudio said they would be. She sees Tia going in, but she isn't sure that it's Tia. So after Dana pays for them to get in, she marches right up to Claudio and asks him what the deal is. Claudio's like, oh, what did you expect me to do? After we did what we did in the hotel room, you just up and leave. And when I asked you who you was calling, you told me you was checking your messages, but I call a number and it's Vince's phone number. and you was calling Vince and he answered the phone, and you basically just playing in my face, you going back and forth. And basically Dana goes off. She's like, well, you playing in my face too. I seen Tia and I seen her in here. You told me that was over. And so basically Claudio's like, it is over. I just have her down here just to do what he do. Tia overhears him and she gets very upset about it. And that's when Dana realizes that Claudio and Tia are supposed to be in a relationship, and that the company actually stands for Tillman and Tia, or Tia and Tillman is Claudio's last name. And so she realizes that the company is actually for Tia and Tillman, and that's their business together. Tia goes off, Dana goes off, Dana pulls out her stun gun to basically kind of like keep Claudio away from her while everyone's going at it. Tia takes the stun gun from Dana and she tases Claudio multiple times, and Dana passes out from shock. Jerry takes Dana and she gets her out of there, and they're driving, and as they're driving they get into it with each other. Dana, she's basically going off about the situation, and then she goes off about Vince.
And while they're in the car arguing, Dana accuses Jerry of forcing Butter Pecan to get rid of her baby, and Jerry's like, I didn't force her to get it. I sat down with her and I talked to her about her options because she's really young and she doesn't need that kind of stress on her life right now with her career taking off. But Butter Pecan wasn't trying to hear it. She was very combative with me and she wasn't trying to hear anything I was saying, so I just let her do her.
She says some hurtful things that hurt Jerry, and Jerry says some hurtful things that hurt Dana. They decide to make up and realize that they're true friends for real. As they're driving, this Jeep that Dana sees following them, she's like, oh, somebody's following us. And Jerry's like, oh, nobody's following us. So when they stop to pull over to talk, Dana sees the Jeep coming, and she's like, it's that Jeep that's following us. And these two dudes hop out basically with guns, and they try to basically rob them. And Dana's like, oh my gosh, we're being robbed. And Jerry pulls out a gun and she's like, y'all done messed with the wrong sister today. She fires off 2 rounds, scaring the guys off. And then she drives off. She goes down to Blondie's, which is the exotic dancing club that she works at. And so she decides to tell Dana that that's her last night working there, because she wants to be able to look her kids in the face and be honest about where she's at. And she wants to spend more time with her kids. And like that near-death experience that they just experienced basically let her know that this was not how she wanted to die. This is not how she wanted to leave her legacy. And so it's her last night. It's her last dance at the club. And so Dana goes out to the audience to watch. And she notices some familiar faces in the audience. And at first she thinks it's Naomi. But then when she looks closer, she realizes it's the girls of Dangerous Lyrics. Dana goes over to try and figure out what they're doing there, and they all basically start going off talking about, oh, Butter Pecan, your brothers, they didn't do a good enough job taking care of Jerry. Dana discovers that those girls are there to take Jerry out. Basically, they plan on killing Jerry. Dana tries to warn Jerry, but the girls from Dangerous Lyrics stop her, and they throw her to the ground before she can. They rush the stage. It's a 6-foot stage, so it's 6 feet high. So they pull Jerry off the stage and they jump her. Nobody really helps Jerry out except for Dana, who's trying, but she can't get to them because the girls from Dangerous Lyrics are making sure nobody jumps in the fight other than them. They jump Jerry and then they leave, and Jerry is badly beaten up. 2 things. Number 1, they jump Jerry because Butter Pecan is jealous of Jerry, and it's like, I understand Butter Pecan being upset, but I really was like, why would the other girls in Dangerous Lyrics help her jump? I understood, because they're a wolf pack. They're a wolf pack, and it's a wolf pack mentality. And so because Butter Pecan is their alpha leader, they're gonna follow her. They're just a bunch of followers. But it's like, at the same time, I'm like, why would y'all jump Jerry when the whole reason Jerry and Butter Pecan started getting into it was because Jerry convinced Jefferson to let the other girls lead songs, aside from it all just being Butter Pecan. And I'm like, why would y'all jump the person who's been advocating for y'all to get some shine? Like, she's literally like the reason y'all are getting shine on the tracks. Like, she's literally the reason y'all are getting to be up front more. Like, she's the reason y'all getting equal distribution for the songs, but y'all want to be followers and y'all want to follow behind Butter Pecan's stupid 19-year-old self, and y'all jumped her. And basically Jerry is badly beaten up. She needs 50 stitches. Her leg is broken, blood everywhere. But you know what? Even though they jumped Jerry, it's 5 members in Dangerous Lyrics, but only 4 of them ended up jumping Jerry because one of the girls took off running because she didn't want no parts of it. I'm like, it was 4-on-1, but I mean, y'all did some damage, but obviously Jerry did some damage too, because Butter Pecan came out that fight looking tore up. I'm like, okay, Jerry, I see you. After Dana makes sure that Jerry is good and gets her to the hospital, Dana goes to see Vince. They don't get back together, but they do make up. So after the situation, we find out that Jerry she's okay-ish, like she's gonna live, but she's injured. Dangerous Lyrics, they blow up off the situation. It brings them attention. It brings attention to their music. you know how it goes. They blow up off the situation, and their music starts becoming popular because they done jumped this lady in a strip club. And I'm like, really, y'all? Really? And of course, Dana tries to get in contact with Jefferson to let him know what happened. Jefferson is nowhere to be found. He does not care what happened to Jerry. He don't pick up the phone, so he's nowhere to be found. And that's basically the end of him and Jerry. Dana is set on going back to New York. And while she's at Vince's, she and Vince, they're talking and they hear Juanita and Naomi get into it again. Juanita put her hands on Naomi and basically puts Naomi out. And so Naomi, she gets her stuff. She talks to Vince and Dana. She basically lets Dana know, hey, me and Vince, we had a rendezvous, but it's not what you think. It's not no continuing affair. It was just a one-time thing. Dana's like, it's okay. We were broken up, so I'm not mad about it. And so Naomi, she gets her stuff and she leaves. Juanita starts begging her to come back. She's like, wait, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean for you to leave. And Naomi's like, you told me to go, so I'm out. And she leaves, and that's the last they see of Naomi for about 10 years. And so Dana and Vince admit their rendezvous to each other. Dana confesses about Claudio, and Vince confesses about Naomi. They hug it out after some tears. The next day, Vince goes to see Kwanzaa sing. Dana ends up going to see too, but she doesn't tell Vince that she's going. And it's the same arrangement as last time. He can look, but he can't interact with Kwanzaa. And so basically after the performance, Kwanzaa runs up to Drake and she hugs him and they walk off together hand in hand. And Malika, she basically just looks back at Vince and frowns and then keeps going. And then that's when Dana pops up and Vince basically tells Dana that she was right, that they don't need him around and that they don't really care about him and that basically they're good without him. And, he's kind of hurt by that because he wants to be in Kwanzaa's life. Butter Pecan, she was on the run because of what happened with Jerry. But she ends up getting caught because she tried to go run to Mexico, but she ends up getting caught at the border. And Vince, when Womack asked Vince to spy on Rosalie, Vince agreed to do it, but at a price. And so the price was that Womack would have to shave off his Jerry curl. His Jerry curl is gone. And so basically Dana meets up with Rosalie, and Rosalie basically explains the situation to Dana and explains that the guy that Vince attacked at the poetry club was a guy that had flirted with Rosalie literally right before he showed up, and she rejected him. And that's why he kept looking at her, because he was upset about her rejecting him. And she said she was thankful that Vince was there because Vince basically made her feel safe and made her feel like nothing would go down. Rosalie basically reveals that after that run-in with Vince at the poetry club, she went home to Womack and she looked around at her house. She had to remind herself of all the blessings she had, how blessed she was to have Womack in her life and her kids and her house and how good she had it. She never considered cheating on Womack, but she did want to feel independent apart from being his wife and just being a mother. She wanted her own life, basically. She went home and basically talked it out with Womack, and basically they're in a good place. And she was not having an affair on him. After Dana talks with Rosalie, Womack, and the kids, they give her some money to start her new life in New York. Dana, she leaves and she goes to get her financial affairs in order because she still thinks she's in debt. But when she goes to get that stuff in order, she discovers that her debt has been paid off, and she's confused about it at first. Dana goes back to see Vince. They see the Latina girl that Juanita was talking with earlier. Juanita moves the Latina girl in after Naomi leaves out. Dana and Vince, they get together in bed again, but they are not back together. Basically just call it one for the road. Dana decides, as a going away present to Vince, she decides to take him to go see Kwanzaa. Malika's freaking out. She's like, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. Vince gets closure from Malika. He's basically like, did you ever love me? And Malika's like, no. He discovers that Malika still has not told her who he is. He decides to just not necessarily let it go, but to just accept that it's going to have to take place how Malika wants it to take place. So he gets ready to leave, and Dana's like, we came all the way out here. You are going to see this little girl tonight. And so Dana basically takes him back up on the porch, and she rings the doorbell until somebody answers. She demands that Vince be able to see Kwanzaa. And, Vince acknowledges Drake. Drake acknowledges Vince. They have an understanding that things are not sweet between them, but it's not going to be no issues. Vince just wants to see Kwanzaa.
Towards the end of the book, we get flash forwards of the characters' perspectives and them telling us what happens in the future. And they all reference this one encounter in an airport 10 years from the future. Naomi is there with her 2 kids. She ends up having a second daughter that looks a lot like Vince. Vince and Dana are there, and they are married. And Jerry is there pregnant with her husband, who is neither Jefferson or Melvin. She's married to a whole new guy. And so we find out that 10 years into the future, everyone's doing just fine. Everyone's doing well.
And Malika, she basically finally admits to Kwanzaa that Vince is her actual father. And that's how the book ends, with Vince finally getting to see Kwanzaa. I gave this book a 4. I enjoyed this book, but Dana and Vince, they worked my nerve this whole freaking book. But I was invested. The storyline was good. The characters were good. The writing was good. I gave it a 4. Thank you for tuning into this video today. If you liked it, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And be sure to check out more content on my channel. And I'll see you next time. After Dana and let's call him Stefan. About to call him Stefan again. The letter that's Vince Womack and